go to the physio, get my exercises, I do them, I feel good, I go back to my sport. And that's when people get re-injured, because I've never actually built a strength base and actually built a platform to be able to minimize that injury.
Hi, welcome back to the BRIXX Performance Podcast, where we break down the systems, science, and strategies that help athletes perform at their best and stay on the field longer. I am your host, Matthew Williamson. I'm an exercise scientist and the head coach of Central Coast Strength and Conditioning. And today's episode, we're unpacking one of the biggest ongoing debates in our field: performance versus injury prevention. Are they really separate goals, or are they two sides of the same coin? And here's why this matters. Because in field sports, if you think about rugby, AFL, football, and hockey, we see the same injuries over and over again. We see hamstring strains, we see ACL ruptures, we see a lot of lateral ankle sprains, we also see a lot of groin / adductor tears, and also we can get a lot of lumbar overload as well, which can present as people having throbbing lower backs, or they can have really sharp pain in their lower backs. But strength and conditioning, often seen as performance side, can also be a massive prevention behind this. And so today on my podcast, I've brought in Kosta. How you doing, mate?
Good, mate. Good. Excited to be on.
Yeah, good. Kosta is the owner of 747 Fitness, and he's worked with athletes at all different stages, and he's here to help share some thoughts about his approach to creating resilient athletes. So Kosta, mate, give us a bit of an introduction. Tell us where you're at and a bit about your background.
Yeah, mate. So I'm the owner of 747 Fitness. Got a facility out in Melbourne, Australia. If people don't know, I've had my studio now for 14 years. And then we cater for pretty much everyone in our facility. So we got professional athletes, semi-pro, amateur. We also did a general pop. We also did boxing classes, HIIT classes. So we've got a group class timetable. So we try to help out everyone as best as we can. But one of my biggest passion is athlete development, strength and conditioning. I'm more about the junior athlete development, but we'll talk about and let it out later on. So that's how pretty much it. Yeah, I wouldn't know what else to do, to be honest. I've done this my whole life, so that's what I've been doing is just coaching.
Yeah, man. How old were you when you started?
20.
Yeah, I was exactly the same. I was 20, turning 21 when I started.
Yes.
And I'm 30, turning 31 now. So yeah, I've been doing it 10 years. And yeah, the same thing. You know, I'm sure running your own business, there's times where you're like, man, this is hard. Like, this is always hard. I think, oh, what else could I do? And I'm like, well, this is what I want to do. This is all I want to do. So yeah, I totally get that. What are some of the athletes you're working with at the moment?
Yeah, so we work with from a lot of multiple sports, but I know over the years I've just gotten this name for soccer.
Nice.
So that just, kind of the people that I network and I connect with, and I've got a big passion for that, and fighting as well, combat sports, because I used to be a fighter myself. I used to fight professional kickboxing. So I kind of got that, and I've got, like I said, a lot of footballers and soccer players. I work with a lot of sporting clubs as well here that are semi-pro and amateur as well. And then obviously we've got players that I've had come up throughout the whole years with me and have turned into pros. So currently working with, and I've worked with Nishan Velupillay, that's currently with the Socceroos.
Nice.
Also in Melbourne Victory. Jordan Valadon as well, that's currently a Melbourne Victory. Will Wilson, that's playing actually up your way at Central Coast Mariners. He's with them with the Kenya national team. I'm also currently looking after Josh Demevsky, that's playing at Macarthur in Sydney. He was a Melbourne boy. Got a couple of boys that were kind of ex-pros and kind of fell out of the system. Now they're trying to get back in that system. So trying to give them that best chance of getting back in there, which will unfold later on. So there's just a few people that I can mention that are at that elite crop. We've got George Noah as well, which is a professional rugby player. So there's, different players that coming through,
Yeah, nice.
Futsal players here. We can talk about this all day.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing we're going to talk about today as well is a topic that I find really interesting, and one that I push quite a lot with my athletes, is about looking at strength conditioning as an actual prevention method. Yeah, as you know, when an athlete injures themselves, they can it can do a small injury or they can go real big. We can go a grade 1 hamstring strain, which is just going to be a few weeks out and some low load introductions back, or it's going to be a massive injury like an ACL rupture, for instance, and that's usually looking at a 12-month rehab before they get back on the field. And so when I talk about strength and conditioning with my guys, I tell them about, yeah, it's great to be in this performance mindset. We're trying to push and be our best and be our best. But one of the best things that makes the best thing that can make an athlete the best. Sorry, I'm phrasing this poorly. Nothing makes an athlete better at their sport than playing their sport. And so by implementing strength and conditioning and becoming more resilient through strength, you can actually reduce the likelihood of a lot of your injuries. There's a lot of research behind this. And so what I was hoping to talk today is to talk about specifically field-based sports. What are some of the most common injuries that you see with your athletes in field-based sports? And what kind of strength work do you do to help reduce the chance of this? So we'll start with the most common injuries. What are the most common injuries you see in, say, your soccer athletes?
Yeah, look, you see a lot of when people come to me, you see a lot of hamstring strains. We see groins as well that go, even calves. Look, the impact ones, you really can't do anything about it. Someone goes in double foot tackle on their ankles. It is what it is. Someone comes there, or they're running down the line, they go in a pothole, or they get sandwiched by someone, and it's just, But like you said, strength is key. There's so much research out there. I don't want to, we don't want to be going to bringing up research papers or anything like that. But strength is key, to reduce the likelihood of injury. When someone's more stronger, they're more robust as well, and they can control themselves more. So obviously what I've got in my facilities, we've got protocols that I've got set up and I want the boys to hit. Obviously in season, we can't do that. Off season, it's easier because I've got time and we can work with them. So we can actually hit and actually push them a lot more because I don't really have to worry about them being sore, if that kind of makes sense, because they're just with me full time, 4 or 5 days a week. And as we know here, that's when we build a really good base. So like what you said, what do I work with them? I just usually get through a bit of a screening process because obviously all the pros that I have and the semi-pros, they've all got different ways that do things at clubs. And some of them at a pro level don't even really have SNC at a really high level. So what I do is I get them in, I screen them as best as I can. And then what I've got set up, and then what we do is we actually work out the strengths and the weaknesses in their body, and then we'll start to program that way. And once we actually fix those little deficiencies, okay, and there's no pain there, and then we actually start to look up their strengths and start to build them up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. It's one of the key I took away there was talking about you prep this kind of stuff in the off season, and that's something that I'll also say to guys so they come and contact me in the that kind of November, December time for field-based sports. So they finish their season, have a month or so off, and if we run a bit of promotion and people get in contact with us and stuff, I'll say, look, really, when it comes to injury prevention, you want to start now, because as you said, you're not playing, you're not doing your Tuesday night, Thursday night training, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, depending on what level they're playing at. You don't have your game on the weekends. When wet weather, you've got 2 games a week to make up for it. It's a lot of work. Your body's undergoing a lot of work at that time. So for us to try and build up your muscles and your tendons, basically build up what we call tissue capacity at that time, that requires work as well. And it's work stacked on top of work. Whereas in the off season, when you're not playing, we can lay the foundations now. And it's so much easier to maintain a fitness level than it is to build on a fitness level. So if you strengthen up your quads, adductors, hamstrings through higher volume training in the off season, you're going to be able to maintain that with much lower volume and a much higher intensity efforts, which won't interfere as much with your training and your game day as well. So I totally agree with what you said there. About starting early in the off season when you get that opportunity. If you're thinking about strength conditioning to prevent injuries, think about starting in the off season because that's where you can lay a lot of this foundational work down.
Yeah. And I think especially here in Australia as a country where we're not really proactive, we're more reactive. And
Yeah.
as we know, like, prevention is better than cure, but people wait to get injured and they come and see me as well from a non-actual, a pro. Kosta,
Mm,
they've done their hammy. It's like, oh, how come you didn't come here? Oh, we didn't think we needed it. I think
mm.
things are changing in the Australian landscape. I think people are starting to become more aware of it and actually starting to see the benefits that, the players that I had, no soft tissue injuries in 5, 6 years. So little stuff like that, we can always monitor and, working with coaches and making sure we understand their load. And then obviously
Mm.
we mimic our sessions to be able to help them perform on the field. Because at the end of the day, um, as much as people want to say we're secondary, the skill comes first, the coach comes first, and we're just there to help them with that extra 1% to keep them on board. Because if they can't play this sport, if they're no good, it doesn't matter how much speed work you do, doesn't matter how much change direction training you do. If they can't read the play, if they can't, be able to be good at their sport, there's no point of doing all the work that we're doing. But what we can do is we can create that little bit of a change to keep them on the park and keeping them always, good and actually being able to perform. And every time they go in there, they actually feel good.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. It's one of the trickier things I find in my context in my gym is that we're working with a lot of local athletes. Obviously, we're on the Central Coast, so about an hour and a half north of Sydney, about an hour 10 south of Newcastle. Big sporting scenes in Sydney and Newcastle, and a lot of my guys and girls would want to go to those scenes. So I've got a few athletes that compete at national level, like in like track and field, and like more individual sports, like combat sports as well. But for a lot of the team sports, a lot of my guys, their goal is to actually improve here on the Central Coast and hopefully get a chance to play in Sydney or Newcastle. Some do play in Newcastle and make the commute. Some play in Sydney and make the commute, but a lot of them, that's their goal. So they're kind of at that level and they're not getting access to proper strength and conditioning. Even if their club puts it on, they can't make it because they've got to travel up there for an extra couple of days per week, or they've got to get there an hour and a half earlier, say at like 4:30 to get that S&C session in with their team. So they come to us and they do it like privately. And yeah, that's what we're always talking about with them. It's how can we manage the load without getting so much information from your team about what you're doing? How can we manage the load here inside the gym to keep you topped up and keep that strength that we built in the off season, but not push you so hard that you're going to overload your body and create injury in season, but also you're fresh in season to actually put in your best effort at training and on the weekend, because nothing makes you better at your sport than playing your sport. In fact, my athletes will use their gym membership less in season than they will in off season for that reason.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, look, at the end of the day, like what you said about in season, it's all about maintenance.
Mm,
So whatever groundwork, and any athletes or parents listening to it, get your kids into the gym and if, even get them started now when they're in season, just to be able to learn how to actually move and actually do the movements properly. And when, off season comes, then you can actually start to hit up that load and actually get that intensity in and actually start to build that mass, which they're going to obviously lose when it comes to the in season because I'll be doing so much running and things like that. But in season strength and conditioning, I think for me it's really important. It's vital
mm,
for them to keep it up because you don't want to build a base and then stop. You know what I mean? That's when everything starts to weaken. You start to lose the muscles of, you start to drop muscle mass. And that's what you don't want. You want to actually keep up the muscle there. So obviously, in season, what you want to be doing, the way I work with my athletes is first of all, what I like to do is I like to do what they do at their club. So I like to give them what they don't get at the club when they come and see
mm,
me, because obviously I build a relationship with them over, 10, 12 years that I've had them actually strength and conditioning from a very young age. And then what I do is, especially with the load and actually like the sets, the reps and all that sort of stuff, I like to go heavier and then go less repetitions. So we keep the quality and we keep the intent. Because what I'm seeing a lot of is when they get in season, when they first come, there's no intention.
mm.
You know what I mean? There's no intent. Yeah, man, I'll lift it. And they look like they're half asleep. It's like, no, man, we want to go heavier, keep your form really good. All right. And then we want to attack that lift like it's, your life depends on it. And then what we do is like to do a lot of power training as well. So that's how we kind of structure it. But then again, then obviously I've got to look of like a goalkeeper, just say for soccer, and a field player. I don't treat them the same. Because I've got a lot of boys, usually talking about from a soccer football background. Um, the upper body doesn't really make much of it. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit fatigued, if that makes sense. So when I do that when the way I train them is I still do some volume training, just say for their upper body. So I still get in the bench press because they enjoy doing that as well. And then, making sure their posture is good. So we do a lot of pulling exercises as well. And we'll still go that higher volume a little bit because it's not going to interfere with their lower body in a way.
Yeah.
and they feel good. So the way I like to work with the athletes, I just always want to get feedback. How did you pull up? How did you find that? You know, and obviously I want to start off slow because I don't want to do some dramatic changes and then they can't play their game.
Mm, mm.
So slowly like that. But that's what I'm saying. Everybody's different. But if I was to work with a goalkeeper, I wouldn't be putting a lot of load on him because his what he needs to do as well on the field is, you know, be able to go from left to right and move and catch, and the last thing I want to do is make him sore through the chest and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You want to keep them fresh so they can play at their absolute best in training and on the weekend so that they can maximize their performance of their skills, such as reaching for the ball, diving to the ground, moving laterally. And they want them to do that fresh. Because if they show up with really sore legs and they're a bit labored as they move, well, they're not now moving with a massive intent when they're practicing their skill of their sport. And that starts to bring them back a little bit as well. It is a tricky one. It's a tricky one to get balanced, for sure. So what's when it comes to injuries and stuff, when we're talking about building strength, because one of my favorite statistics when it comes to field-based sports is that actually stretching or flexibility training can reduce injuries by 4%, whereas strength training has been shown to reduce it by 69%. So that's a massive, massive difference, and quite different to still what a lot of people think. You know, when people have an injury, it's about what mobility exercises can I do? What can I stretch? And they come to me and I'm talking about what we can strengthen. Why is it that when we get stronger, we actually...
Hey, I'm Shane, and I recently outfitted my entire garage with BRIXX Fitness, and honestly, I couldn't be happier. As soon as I felt the equipment, I knew it was top-notch, solid, durable gear. From the power rack to the adjustable dumbbells and the cardio machine, everything was built like a tank. Working night shifts made it challenging to find the time and energy to get to the gym. Now I just train a few meters from my kitchen, and honestly, no more excuses. But the best part, I now have more time with my kids and I look forward to them joining me too. Knowing this equipment will last a lifetime, the service from BRIXX was top tier too. Fast delivery, helpful support, and just a smooth process from start to finish. Thinking of setting up a gym like I did? Stop thinking, BRIXX is the real deal. Just do it, you won't regret it.
Yeah, because obviously our body can handle a lot more. So I mean, we know how to apply more force into the ground as well and being able to move that weight. So obviously we connect and we engage in more in muscles as well. So when the body's moving up, so just imagine yourself, you know, lifting a deadlift, you know, 1.5 times your body weight. You know, your body can actually handle more load, and you're actually getting a lot more newtons as well. If you understand what I'm trying to say here. But what we're still stuck in that mindset is a lot of people go to the physio. The physio, as we know, is early stage, right? And they give them a few mobility exercises and a few stretches to do, right? But that's not like what we just said before. When it's something is 4%, like what you said to help, and then you've got strength, which is such a big key with that statistic that you just brought up, we're still not engraved because we're still thinking, okay, go to the physio, get my exercises, I do them, I feel good, I go back to my sport. And that's when people get re-injured, because I've never actually built a strength base and actually built a platform to be able to minimize that injury.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we get stronger, when we get bigger muscles, our tissues actually become thicker. I think that's what people don't quite realize, that we don't actually gain new strands of muscle. The strands that we have actually become thicker. So these thicker tissues can handle a lot more. They can absorb a lot more force. They also then create, when we get stronger, especially if we do a lot of eccentric work. I love like Nordic drops. I love eccentric adductor slides. I think that, and also I like to do a lot of eccentric work when it comes to around the quad tendon as well, because that's actually going to target specifically our tendons and ligaments. So from our muscles becoming thicker and our tendons and ligaments becoming thicker, also a lot of plyometrics can help thicken up our ligaments and tendons. It's a slow process, but it does happen. All of these things create tissue resilience, tissue capacities, they can handle more, but also down at the joints where the tendons and ligaments attach, those joints become a lot more stable. The joints that we need, so some joints in our body, we want to be able to move quite a lot, such as our shoulder and our hip joint, but other joints in our body, we actually want to be able to resist movement. So for instance, our lumbar spine, that's a stability joint. We actually don't want that to move a whole lot. So when we do a lot of strength training, we're increasing the thickness of our muscle tissues, we're increasing the thickness of our tendons and ligaments, and that's going to help the tissue itself. So if you think about adductor and hamstring injuries, those tissues themselves become thicker and more resilient. And then when we have our tendons and our ligaments stronger, things like our ankles and our knees and our lower back, they can become more resilient to injuries as well because they're strong at the joint. The joints take on the forces and the directions that they come, and they handle those forces, and nothing gives way. ACL injuries are a classic. I think 80%. Last time I remember when I was at uni, learning that 80% of ACL injuries come from a non-contact situation. Someone plants their foot, change direction, and it just goes. As those forces translate forward, the ACL attaches to the tibia, and it's that ACL supposed to prevent the tibia from shooting too far forward. It can't do that due to the forces that are applied, and that's where it gets a partial or full tear. But strengthening up the quads and the hamstrings and the calves, everything up and below and above it, as well as the glutes as well, can help share those forces across the entire body. So when you plant your foot to decelerate, the quad, the hamstrings, the glutes, even if you're in a good postural position, you can take some of the forces through the upper body as well. And it's not all just loaded in one quick fashion towards your knee, which then leads to the actual ligament of the ACL, PCL, MCL, or meniscus actually tearing.
And also, like, people listening, like the joint by joint theory. A lot of people still think like that they don't understand, which I get. It's not their job, but if someone has a sore knee or they've hurt their knee, they go, "I've got to loosen up my knee." You can't loosen up your knee. Your knee's a stability muscle. So what you got to do, as you know, it's the joint by joint theory. I think it was Gray Cook. I think that came up with it. He pretty much says you can make the ankle mobile, you can make the hip mobile, which is going to help you stabilize the knee. So a lot of people don't look at that. If they go straight to the source and they go, "Okay, my knee's sore. What's going on with my knee?" Well, how about we have a look at what's going on at the hip, what's going on at the ankle, and then we can actually get a better engagement. Because if they're stiff, if there's too much internal rotation, you know what I mean? If your glute med is not switching on, if you're only getting 2 or 3 centimeters of range of motion in the ankle, well, they're the things that we got to look at so we can actually stop, from whatever your knee soreness you call it. You know what I mean? Because there's obviously a lot of other stuff that's going on in the body. So we can't just always look at the thing that just hurts. Look at the things around it.
Yeah. I love the joint by joint theory. I use it a lot when it comes to writing programs for injury prevention. And for the listeners, the joint by joint theory is if you go through the joints through the body, some, as I mentioned, were supposed to be mobile and some are supposed to be stable. And so the hip and the ankle, they're mobile joints. They're supposed to have good range of motion. But the knee joint, we actually want to resist movement. We don't want our knee joint moving too much. Same with the lumbar spine as well.
A lot of people think like what you just said about the lumbar spine is like, "Oh, my lower back sore, I need to roll it out and loosen it out." You don't. You got so much force that goes in there. The last thing you want to try to do is lengthen out your lower back, which is not designed for that. So listening to people, if they get a sore back, all right, if you get your thoracic spine, which is the upper back, you can foam roll that, you can stretch that, you can get movement in that, but you're not supposed to be trying to get movement in the lower back.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, yes, you get your glutes to get fired up. You fire up your glute max, your glute med, get them working, but don't sit there and try to work on your lower back because, like we said, it's a stability muscle. It's not designed to be mobile.
Exactly.
And people still getting strong every day.
Yeah. And what people don't realize as well about the core is just how much function the core has. So when I think about lower backs, I think mobile at the hip, mobile at the thoracic spine as well. But I think about every direction the core moves. It flexes, and then it has anti-flexion, it extends, it has anti-flexion, it has rotation, lateral flexion. The core is supposed to move in a lot of different directions. If you strengthen it in all of those directions, you are going to be able to create that lower back to become very stable. And so no matter which direction it moves, it can handle those movements, and because it's strong in that direction as well, and you can reduce overloading the lower back by being mobile through the hips, strong through the glutes, and mobile through the thoracic spine as well. It's a really different way to thinking about it, whereas everyone, as you said, thinks to, well, what can I stretch in my lower back? It's not always the right approach. A couple of statistics that I kind of brought to the table, the classic ones that sure every strength conditioning coach has heard, but in a big meta-analysis Just talking about hamstring injuries, which is a very common one. They had a 51% reduction in hamstring strains by introducing the Nordic drop across all different variety of field-based sports. And so that statistic there shows that one specific hamstring strengthening exercise can reduce the likelihood by 51%, just implementing it once.
Massive. I include Nordics in every single club that I work at.
Absolutely. 100%.
And it's on field based. It's the best thing. I've seen it be reduced. I've been at a club now for 4 years. We've not had one hamstring strain.
Yeah. 100%.
So it makes a big difference. And yeah, for some of the players, it might mean it's boring and things like that. But you know what? You're on the field every week. You're doing what you love. So it's where you want to be at.
Yeah, 100%. And we actually have a Nord board in my gym, so we can actually measure hamstring strength from there. And yeah, as soon as someone pulls has injured a hamstring, it's the first number that we see drop massively. But it's also another one that we can use in our screening. So when we first get someone to join the gym, we have a look at their scores on the Nord board. We can say, okay, this is where we need to increase it to. They set that target, add Nords in once a week. After a few weeks, bump up to twice a week. Then look to up the reps from there. Super simple protocol, always increases hamstring strength. And if someone's injured, then we just do it on the lying hamstring curl. So lay on the hamstring curl, bring it up with 2, drop 1 foot, and then slowly lower eccentrically that way. And we do that unilaterally. And I found that to be just as effective in improving that eccentric hamstring scores. And yeah, massively reduces hamstring injuries. The other one, as well as the FIFA 11, obviously super popular in football stuff, that's been shown to reduce ankle or lateral ankle sprains by 30 to 40%. So that's another protocol there that's teaching people to have good stability and strength in their lower body. And that helps prevent injuries up and down the chain.
Which is very good. FIFA 11 have done that, and I've seen it at clubs, but they need to get someone that's qualified to implement that as well, because I've actually seen the program being delivered before by coaches, which is understand it's not their skill set. You know, a coach should be, concentrating on actually getting the players better strategically, technically, and all that. But there's no point of just saying, okay, cool, jump and land, and then you get the knee caving in, you've got putting as much force they can, they're landing on their heel striking first, and actually becoming more bad. But if you implement something like that with an actually qualified practitioner, happy days.
Yeah, for sure. Do you do much work online, mate?
A little bit, not much, but a little bit.
I don't do a massive amount either. I find, especially when it comes to injury, like prehab or rehab and stuff, I find that more than any other form of strength training, I find it's so much better to do in person, because it's the little niche things that come from the way that you execute it that can make a massive difference. You know, when I see someone do a box squat, I give my tips, and they do this and this, you'll get a better result for sure. But either way, if you sit to a box, keep upright and stand, you are going to be strengthening the quads, the glutes, the lower back at a pretty good amount, and some of my little technical cues and changes will make it easier for you to do that lift, and we can push further and harder, no doubt about it. But when it comes to the injury prevention or the rehab or prehab exercises, they've got to be done just right. If you're doing a Nordic drop with your butt sticking back, not using as much hamstrings. If you're doing a Copenhagen hold, but your butt's sticking back, again, you're not loading the adductors as much. And so, with the FIFA 11, those jumps, those lands, trying to stack your joints, ankles, knees, and hips over the top of each other, keeping good posture in the upper body. All of these things come from, I find, best delivered face-to-face. And so when someone has an injury and they're looking to get into strength training to prevent injuries or in a rehab injury, I always say it's always best to find someone face-to-face opposed to online.
Look, when you're doing, especially coming back from a rehab, and you need to make sure that the exercises need to be done at 110%, because you don't want to be using the wrong muscles you're not supposed to. Like I've seen, a lot of athletes that come in and they get the band and they do glute activation and just saying they're going for lateral steps, all right, and then they're dragging their hip. They're not actually engaging in their glute. So you're actually wasting your time. Shouldn't be doing that exercise at all. So it has to be quality.
Yeah, and absolutely.
To be honest, doing it by yourself, or I've got a lot of people that go, yeah, my physio told me this. I went on YouTube and I found this. I'm like, dude, you're still the same 6 weeks later. Nothing's really working. We've got to change our approach. We've got to change the way you do things and actually get it done to be done properly. I think a lot of people still taking shortcuts and they're still kind of pissing in our industry because there's so much value that we can see. And as we know, we're S&C coaches and you can see the injury prevention rate for what you said, the stat 69% opposing to do 4% of mobility and stretching. Strength is key. The more stronger you are, the more robust you are, the better you're going to be, the less injury prone you're going to be to those soft tissue injuries. So
Yeah.
why are people not actually investing into a proper structured strength and conditioning coach and a program? Do you know what I mean? Because what it still is, people call themselves and the titles are SNC, strength and conditioning coach, and they're doing burpees for 1 minute, squat jump for 1 minute. Honestly, I say it all the time. I say,
All the
show me
time,
your
bro.
program.
All the
There's
time.
15 exercises, but it's about doing the boring stuff, right? But doing it at 100%. I tell my athletes, this might not look sexy, what I'm doing with you, but what I'm doing works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then obviously we hit parameters. You know what I mean? Can they trap bar deadlift, 1.5 times their body weight? Can they squat 1.5 times the body weight? Because it means they can control their body plus another half. And then we're actually getting somewhere with their strength. They actually be building that robustness in them. But
Yeah.
I'm not here to make it, okay, squat jumps 30 seconds, this for 20. That's not actual strength and conditioning. Yeah, there's a time and place for that to do some conditioning at the end of it. But what we want to do is actually get him strong through the big compound lifts. So if you're listening, can you squat? Can you deadlift? Minimum 1.5 times your body weight because you control, like I said before, your body weight plus another half. Can you bench press 1.25 times your body weight? Obviously, if you play like rugby and stuff, you probably want to have a better upper body as well, like stronger. So those parameters will change. But it's like, what are you like? If you're listening, like, what are you working towards with? Because I see people, I'll go to the gym. What are you doing at the gym? Oh, yeah, I'll do a bit of this, I'll do a bit of that. That's not the answer. You need a program to follow to get you somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. The one that really like blew me away, I remember seeing this comparison, and they were talking about like they had videos of people playing sports such like rugby union, combat sports, like soccer, and they're like aggressively changing direction, or they're getting like doing a running at like another 100 and something kilo bloke, getting tackled in combat sport, kicked, punched, wrestled, whatever it may be. And then they cut to kind of this other training where they're balancing on a Bosu ball. Maybe they're doing some like banded work, or maybe doing some burpees and stuff. And you look at the two and you think the one is never going to prepare you for the other. I had a friend tell me about, he kind of put it to me. He's like, what is it about holding a plank for 2 minutes that makes you think that a rugby union forward is going to be able to is going to have the core strength to handle a scrum? Especially at the highest level where those scrums are like 8 to 100 to 1,000 kilos per team. And then you're doing a 2-minute plank and you think that's going to be enough core strength to support that. You think about it that way, you think, yeah, no, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way that doing your body weight squats is going to prepare you to jump for a header, land on one foot, and immediately change direction. They're just not matching. You need to have that heavy load put through the body so that you can have the strength, the tissue resilience, and capacity to handle those kind of massive force outputs that you put in when you play your sport. And if you can't, it's likely that you've increased your chance of a potential injury coming up.
And at the end of the day, like, there's no specificity in a way. The best way to be specific is actually playing the sport. So you see people, squatting on a Bosu ball. It's not going to help you transfer over to the game. Just get into a normal proper squat. Might not look as sexy, but you actually learn how to apply force up and into the ground. Do you know what I mean? So what I mean by that, just imagine your foot that's stuck on the ground and then you're pushing as hard as you can up and trying to engage all your fibers and all the tissues that you have, right, to be able to move quick. Do you know what I mean? And actually you on a Bosu ball, like shaking and thinking that it's specific because if someone bumps me, okay, it's what we need because I'm always unstable when I'm running. Like, and that's how people are selling it to people. But people don't know better and they go, oh, that sounds cool. No. It's not going to help you. Like, we know at the end of the day, what, for S&C, what worked 40 years ago is what's working now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's what we need. But there's been so much change, right? And people go, oh, I've seen this, I've seen that, I've seen this guy do this. They're doing a 6-way circuit. It's not really going to help you, right? It's the same as food. Go look at the diet from 1960s. All right, now you look at the diet, these guys come up with this, come up with that. Just go back to the basics, right, 50 years ago, and just do that now, and you'll get the results.
Yeah, the basics when they first came out, when people were first implementing strength conditioning in the 50s and 60s and, refining their methods all around the world, all different countries had their different ways of trying to figure it out. And they all kind of came to, kind of similar conclusions about the way the importance of weight training and plyometrics and speed work and blah, blah, blah. And these are so groundbreaking, made such a big difference that they became basics, and they've been basics so long that they're now boring. It doesn't mean they don't work. It means they're just statistically very reliable. They've been working for a long time, and people just need to learn to start those basics there and work your way up.
In our industry, people are just trying to reinvent the wheel and trying to make it fun for people. Like, oh, we're going to do this, and everyone goes, oh, that was fun. Like, dude, going in and out of a ladder is not athlete performance. You squatting on a boastable is not athlete performance. You doing burpees for 1 minute straight is not athlete performance.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Holding a 4-minute plank is not going to help you with your athlete performance. Like, people need to start understanding, and they need to start waking up. This is not going to help you. Doing biceps and triceps, training like a bodybuilder, is not going to help you with athlete performance. Do what happens in a game. Get strong through your big compound movements, your squats, your deadlifts, your bench press. Do your jumping, do your landing, do your plyometrics, do them at a high level. Do you know what I mean? Work on your weaknesses, work on your accessories. Make sure you lunge, make sure you hip hinge, make sure you do those motor patterns right at 100%, and just watch your injuries and your soft tissue go away. And that's what needs to be done. I've just pretty much given you a program. Obviously, you got to, work it out what goes where, but these are the things that you need to do.
Yeah, it's literally it's the same thing we've said like throughout this podcast, and all strength conditioning coaches are always preaching that. Yeah, it is really about nailing those basics. If you're an athlete and you're thinking, well, I don't really know where to start with the basics. Have a look at what are some good strength markers for the lower body, for the upper body, for the core, and start there. How many times your body weight should you be squatting? Hex bar deadlifting, bench pressing, how many chin-ups should you be able to do? How many inverted rows should you be able to do? Start there. What should a side plank or a regular plank, like what should those be there? What should those markers be? Start there, then start to get a little more specific with it. I love the single leg box squat as a screening tool for injuries. How many single leg box squats can we do left versus right? That's one of our favorite ones. We use the bench pull as well for testing the upper back, see how strong that is. And then we use our force plates and null boards to do a lot more of our other screening as well. Sorry, yeah, you go.
Yeah, like I said, it's just, you got to look what happens in a game. And that's why I said to you, I love working with junior athlete development, because the juniors is what's going to build you the foundation for long-term sporting success. So I love getting them in at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, because that, for me, is what really needs to get started with, is just the running fundamentals. Do they know how to run in a straight line? How are the mechanics? Can they change direction effectively? Do you know what I mean? Do they know how to take off? Do they know how to apply force into the ground? Do they actually understand how to hip hinge? Do they understand how to actually mobilize? Do they actually know how to activate? Do they actually know how to do a proper warm-up? So you start to implement that from a young age. Then once they get better, I got people doing a deadlift at 14 years old, like 140 kilos. Everyone's going to break his back. His form is on point because he's been hip hinging for 4 years. It's not going to make you injured. And there is no studies out there that lifting weight will stunt your growth. It will not.
No,
it will not.
Disproven.
Parents think, oh, no, he can't go overhead because it's going to stop him from growing. I've had a parent say that to me. Please don't get him to do anything like that. And I said, why not? And they go, because it's going to stop him from growing higher. I'm like, I don't know where you got that from. They go, I've just heard about it. I'm like, that's wrong study. So listen to this. Get your kids into strength training proper.
For sure. It's funny because we both obviously have experience working with like people trying to just get healthy and fit, in the general population space, as well as athletes in that space. And I'm telling you, man, I've had plenty of people who are 30 years and over that just haven't been that active. Maybe they weren't that active in their teens, and they haven't been that active in their 20s. They're now in their 30s, and they're thinking, actually, you know what? I want to do something about my health. So they come to us and they start training with us. watching this 30-year-old man or woman learn to hip hinge and lunge and squat and do a push-up and be able to do like an inverted row and things like that, I'm teaching them. But then I have a 15-year-old come in who's been kind of introduced to sports quite young. Maybe they've done a bit of gym experience or had a PT in the past. And the way that they have control of their body, I am much more comfortable loading them up relative to their current body weight strength. So relative to their current strength, because their patterns are on point. I know that their hinges looks good and we're going to share the load nice and evenly. Whereas with my older client, who you think, oh, well, they're over 30 now, so they can totally strength train. When you watch them move, you think, well, I ain't loading that. That looks really poor. We need to do some really light work to get the patterns down first before we do it. So even though their their biological age are wildly different, their training age is actually, the younger guy may have it over them because they've been training for the last 3 or 4 years. Even if it's just playing their sport and they've been introduced weights for the first time, their body control is so much better. And so because they're young, they're sponges. You can implement the movement patterns right early, and that's really setting up a huge foundation. Even outside of sports performance, if they go on in their mid-20s, whatever, and their sport becomes their hobby while they focus on their career, learning to lift weights and exercise regularly like that, they're going to be able to implement that for the rest of their lives. So there's a 2-for-1 there as well. You're reducing injuries, increasing performance, but you're learning a skill for life by getting into the weights early. So it's definitely something every parent should be thinking about if their kid wants to play a high level sport, but even if they just want to be active in their lives, getting someone to coach you through the basics in the gym is going to make a huge, huge difference.
100%.
100%. All righty, man. Well, I think that pretty much covers all the points I wanted to go over today. I really appreciate you popping on. If you had a takeaway for, say, a parent listening in who's got a child that's wanting to pursue sports, or even an athlete now who's listening and says, oh, I want to start implementing some strength training, where do you think the best place for them to start is?
Find an actual qualified strength and conditioning high performance coach that's actually, do your research, who they've worked with, what they have done. Don't go to your local, uh, personal trainer that's never trained an athlete and has become a bodybuilder, because it's a different kettle of fish altogether. You want to be training them to improve their athletic performance. So parents, do your research. Don't just sign up your kid to a gym just for the sake of doing anything. They're going to get someone with a local personal trainer in there. See what they've done. See if they're an actual athlete development coach. See if they can teach your kid your fundamentals. Ask those questions to the coach. Can you teach my kid how to run? Can you teach them how to accelerate? Can you teach them how to decelerate? Can you teach them how to change direction? Can you teach them how to jump, how to land? Because that's what happens in every sport. Can you help him get a little bit stronger? Because that's actually a proper athlete development coach. They're the questions that need to be asked. That's probably the best way to say it. And don't just sit there and just go in anywhere. Just doing a group class for the sake of it, doing a circuit class is not athlete performance. Doing your pump class is not athletic development. These are the things, and we'll evoke change. We'll get there over time. But these are the questions parents really need to have a hard look at of what the kids should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about trying to make them the best athlete possible, thinking, okay, we're going to do this training and they're going to massively improve their performance. Think about it. We're going to do this training to improve their performance, but also reduce their chance of injury, which in turn will give them more game time. We give them more time to play on Tuesday, Thursday night training, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday night training, which means they're going to be able to practice the skills of their sport more frequently under more game-like conditions, pick up their game IQ, and all of those things are going to make a massive difference to their overall sporting performance. So when you look at the strength conditioning stuff, don't think, oh, is my kid good enough? Does he need it? Does I go to that? Is this something he needs to go to that next level? Something you want to implement early to prevent injury, to better their chances of playing as much sport as possible, to build up their skills, build up their game IQ, and that is a massive, massive help in getting to where they want to be sports performance wise. And you're absolutely right. Find someone local who's got evidence of working with athletes, and they're probably going to be your best bet in terms of where to start.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Matty.
Awesome. Thanks heaps for jumping on, man. I've loved your insights. It's been great to chat some strength and conditioning with a fellow strength conditioning coach. Mate, give yourself a bit of a plug. Where can people find you if they want to start working with you?
Mate, Facebook, Instagram, Kosta Drac. My name, I'm pretty social. You can maybe send an inquiry through my website, 747fitness.com.au. Pretty active on all socials. You can even search up my business, 747 Fitness, just throw any inquiries, reference this podcast, and if you just want some help or whatever that might look like, get a help.
And you're based down in Melbourne, right?
Melbourne, yeah, in the southeastern suburbs. We do clubs all around the southeast, mostly. And we've got a standalone facility in Dandenong. So yeah.
Perfect, mate. Well, that's awesome. Alrighty, guys. Well, if you've enjoyed this episode of the BRIXX Performance Podcast, hit follow and share it with someone who needs to hear it. We've got more conversations on the way. Until next time, I'm Matthew Williamson. Thank you so much for listening. Share it where you think the athletes who could benefit